was one of the greatest blues guitar players of all time, and he was also one of my best friends. Michael passed away many years ago, but I still think about him all the time. I decided to tell the story of my life and my music career in a book, and at the same time, my wonderful relationship and adventures with my buddy Mike Bloomfield. The first time I was aware of Michael was when I was in high school. I was 16 years old, and I had a rock and roll band, and Michael had another rock and roll band. We had rival rock and roll bands. He was aware of me, I was aware of him. Even at that time, I could tell that he had the presence of something really special, someone really special. Michael would say at one of those times that, man, you should come down to the south side with me of Chicago, the west side of Chicago. I've been down there a lot, you know, and I'm really into the blues, man. You got to get into the blues. And Michael said, man, you got to come down with me. I've got this amazing relationships with the great blues masters like Howling Wolf and Muddy Waters, and they're teaching me, man. They're letting me sit in with them, and it's really an amazing trip. It's the blues, and we're learning from the masters, and it's a special time now in Chicago that will probably never happen again. Trust me, you'll really dig it. In doing this book, I really wanted to show how unique Michael was, not just how great he was as a guitarist, but as a person as well, and the experiences that we had together. His philosophy, the way he looked at life in general, and his wit, his intellect. There was much more to Michael than, you know, just being the great guitar player that he was. The book is also about my life, too, and what a unique experience it was, playing the blues as teenagers, going on to carry that tradition of the blues to the rock and roll arena, and we did it together. Michael and I traveled together and played together for many years, and we were in a band called the Electric Flag, and we jammed together for forever. When I moved to New York from Chicago, Michael would come over to my apartment with my wife Gail. We would jam at the piano. You know, I'd play the piano, and this is the guitar that Michael played when we would jam at my apartment in New York City. Hi, this is Steve Roeser.
When I first met Barry in Los Angeles in the 1990s, of course I knew who he was because I was a fan of his music and of Chicago blues in general. But it wasn't until I knew him for a little while that I found out he had recorded an album in the late 60s called Two Jews Blues. Once we had a complete draft of the book, I said to Barry one day, I said, you know what I want to call the book, right?
Two Jews Blues.
Two Jews Blues. And Barry was not against it.
Cool.
That's it, man. We got to use that title. So in a sense, we were recycling a title that Barry had in the 1960s, but I think it sums up the book. It kind of tells the story in those three words of Barry and Michael. There's plenty of stuff in this book to satisfy fans of blues music and rock and roll and classic rock, but it's not just about music. It's not just a lot of facts about Barry's career and Michael's career, because the way the internet is now at our fingertips, we can get all that information. So the stuff that's in the book is more personal in a way. It's not just facts. That's all in there, but it's more about how it felt and the friendship that existed between Barry and Michael and all the other musicians who they were working with and living with. It's just how it felt to be there. That's what we tried to bring out in the book, and I think we succeeded in doing that.
Michael got married very young, but I couldn't find the right girl. I went out with a lot of chicks and everything, and I don't know, it just didn't happen for me, you know, till many years later. Michael actually turned me on to some amazing things, to the blues of Chicago, introduced me to Bob Dylan. But then one night we were in New York at the Chelsea Hotel. He said, you know, my really good friend Gail and her girlfriend are going to come over tonight to see us, you know. Lo and behold, the right girl walked into my room, and it was Gail, and that was the greatest thing Michael ever did for me, introducing me to my wife of 41 years. This is Gail.
Hi. I met Michael in 1967 when the Electric Flag first came to Philadelphia, where I was in college. He needed a place to stay, and we put him up in an apartment in Philadelphia, and I became great friends with him. But Barry was not in the Electric Flag then. This was already after Barry had left. He was an amazing character. He was funny and loving and super smart and took care of his friends, many of them who lived in his house, and he would pay for them. And he was just a really very smart, wonderful human being. He would always tell me, you have to meet my best friend Boris. You have to meet my best friend Boris," which is his nickname for Barry. And he said, come on over, I want you to meet Boris, Barry." And we came over that night, and I met Barry, and in 2 weeks we were engaged. So that's a nice story. And Michael was a wonderful, wonderful person, and of course that was the best thing he ever did for me as well.
Gail and I were living on the Upper West Side in New York, and Michael was staying with us. You know, we would jam and have a great time, and Gail would cook her special tuna casserole. One time, I said, well, I want to invite Bob to come over, Bob Dylan. And we could all jam together, and Gail said, sure, Bob will come, right, for sure. So I called him, and Bob said, yeah, I'll come over tomorrow night. Michael's here. And Michael hadn't seen Bob in a while, and we wanted all to get together. Gail didn't believe that Bob was coming over.
No, I didn't. But when he rang the bell, and I was a huge, huge New York City Dylan fan, and when he rang the bell and I opened the door, I said, okay, I have to keep it together now. I cannot act like a fan. And it was just an amazing night. Barry and Michael and Bob played, and I remember mostly "It Takes a Lot to Laugh, a Train to Cry." That was just unbelievable, the three of you playing.
And Michael was a connoisseur of not just music, but of life and food and just humor, and he was the common denominator wherever we went.
Well, Michael and Barry and I traveled together a lot. We'd always be on tour together, or we'd go visit him. And he would just keep us laughing. He was just so funny, and he loved to go out to eat. But he would eat very quickly, and I learned how to eat very quickly, and we would just have a really great time, the three of us together.
No small talk.
No small talk. Especially at this Jewish restaurant in New York, where it's called Sammy's, and it's a Romanian steakhouse down in the Bowery. Barry is a connoisseur of chopped liver, and Michael would get a real kick out of Barry's,
He also turned me on to Sammy's and the chopped chicken liver.
Chicken liver only, yes. Another really food experience was Ratner's on the Lower East Side next to the Fillmore East. Michael would, we'd all sit and eat vegetarian Jewish food and drink seltzer.
He had such a strong personality, and he affected our lives and a lot of other people's lives. He was such a strong presence, right, that not a day goes by, when I don't think about him, and I'm sure you don't. And he's in our souls and our hearts, and every time I play, every time we're on stage with Nick Gravenitis and the band, or anyone, or with Susan, Michael's there with us in spirit, and that's partly why we did this book, so it could live on, and we can relate these experiences to everyone.
So the book, which is so beautiful and really touches on every bit of the two of you and brought to life all the true experiences that you had with Michael. And I think that it really, for those people who didn't know him, and even our son, who was a little boy when he passed away, that it just gave him a real insight into you, into Michael, into the deep, beautiful relationship that you shared together. It gives a really interesting perspective on the two Jewish guys who had the blues.
Michael had a wonderful and supporting and loving mother, Dorothy, who recently passed away. And when Michael passed away and Susan called and gave us the news, we were devastated, and we've never really recovered, because when Michael was with us, life was different and special, even more special. Dorothy asked me to give the eulogy at the funeral. That was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my whole life, and just what was I going to say to set the record straight? That Michael was important to not just the music world, but to his Judaism, to everything, to his soul, to all the people that he's influenced all over the world, and not just music, but with his manner and personality. And he was a very special, loving, endearing person.